My name is Gina Duvernay, and I'm the Adult Services Manager for Gwinnett County Public Library. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to introduce our speakers and get right straight to the fun. Tonight's featured author is Lynn Cullen, and her best-selling novels include The Woman with the Cure, The Sisters of Summit Avenue, Mrs. Poe, Twain's Inn, The Creation of Eve, and Reigns of Madness. All have been translated into 17 languages and are the recipients of various honors, including NPR Great Read, Oprah Book of the Week, People Magazine Book of the Week, Indie Next Selection, and Atlanta Magazine Best of the Year. Let's give her a round of applause. And she is in conversation with none other than another wonderful author. Colleen Oakley is moderating tonight's talk, and she is the USA Today bestselling author of Jan and Dan and the End of the World, The Invisible Husband of Frick Island, You Were There Too, Close Enough to Touch, and Before I Go. Her books have been translated into more than 20 languages worldwide and have won multiple awards, including the Georgia Author of the Year and French Reader's Prize. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you. All right.
Okay, wonderful. Hello. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. I am so excited to be here. Lynn and I go way back. From I think my debut year, which was 2015, we had the same agent and the same publisher, and she was very kind enough to take me to dinner and tell me about, all the ropes of publishing, and you blurbed my first book, and just a wonderful, wonderful person and friend all around. So I'm so excited to be here. And I'm really excited to talk about this book. Has anybody here read this book? Yeah, a few of you? Okay, well, those that haven't, you are in for a treat. I got the honor to read it, I think like 6 months ago, which is one of the best parts about being an author, is getting to read books early from your friends. But I've always felt this way about Lynn's books, and I get so excited to get one, but I read them so quickly that then I'm like, oh man, it's over. Lynn, write another one. And I read this one in years. It's so easy, just write it quickly. I read this one in 2 nights, which is so, I think, rare for historical fiction, which I want to get into how you do that and make it page turning. But first, I want to start with, for all of you who have not read the book, do you want to start with just like a quick elevator pitch of what it's about, and then we'll get into it?
Yeah, and it's really hard to condense 3 years of work into 20 seconds. But in a nutshell, it's a book about Marilyn Monroe forming a relationship with the only woman to photograph her, Eve Arnold, and the way they changed each other's life in a time that it was not easy for women, and they had something really special. And you'll find it in these pages.
I've always been fascinated by Marilyn Monroe. I think so many of us are in this country. I mean, she's like this mythological, larger-than-life creature. And I was trying to think about when's the first time like I came in contact with her, like as a child. And I really don't have a memory about it. It's just like I always recognized her. It's like she was always part of the culture. And I just want you to talk a little bit about, I know you have a memory of when you first saw her. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I remember really clearly. And then after that, I remember she was just everywhere.
Right.
And I was a kid when she died, and that was everywhere. But my first time when I really knew, watched her, was as an 8-year-old on my TV screen at home. I watched 7-Year Itch. And I was fascinated by her, but I actually was worried about her because she seemed so happy and carefree, and everybody was after her. And somehow she always just, stayed out of their clutches. But as a kid, I worried about her. She just seemed not of this world, and people were trying to pin her down. I guess I was much of a worrywart at age 8. But anyhow, I do remember that. And then I have wanted to write about her ever since I started writing novels. So it's been, decades that I wanted, because I've been writing novels. I have a new model. It used to be setting her story straight since 2008.
Right?
But I never liked it because I actually started in 2007. And so yesterday at a group, I realized it could be celebrating women since 2007.
Oh, I like it.
Sort of
Yeah,
works, sort of,
yeah.
almost there. But anyhow, so I wanted to write about her all these decades, but you have to have a different way in.
Right.
Because there's been so much written about her. And in fact, just when I started doing historical fiction, back in 2007, I wonder when Blonde came out, Joyce Carol Oates' book, because I remember when that came out and I thought, shoot, now I can't write about her, because after Joyce Carol Oates, what am I going to do? But anyhow, a couple decades later, I felt like the coast is clear, and I found a way.
Yeah, well, talk about that. Tell us how you found the way, obviously through Eve, but like, how did that strike you? And how did you come up with the idea to tell her story through the lens of this friendship?
Well, there I was trying to figure out a way about Marilyn. I just was determined again that I would find a way to write about her. And I thought, I'll check all the women photographers that she dealt with and see what they had to say. Because I knew that there were many men who photographed her. In fact, she's one of the reasons we all know about her is because of all the photography, all the photographs. And so I looked up these women and found out there was just one, if you could believe it. Of all those photographs of Marilyn, there's only one woman who photographed her. Eve Arnold is her name. She's been a bit lost to time, which is perfect for me. I like to have these women come to the light. So I got hold of Eve Arnold's book, and I'm not going to go through this as much as I can, but here's Eve Arnold right here. And she had written a book about her and Marilyn Monroe. And first of all, before I even started reading the book, I didn't know of her. I didn't realize I had seen her photographs since I was a kid, like in Life magazine, like this one of Jackie and Caroline. The iconic picture of Malcolm X is Eve's picture. This one here of the hands touching, I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it was a big deal. She recorded, it was her idea to do this story about a baby's first 5 minutes of life, because back in the 50s, women, they were knocked out to have their babies. Their husbands didn't even come, or if they did, they hung out in the stork club. Remember the old stork club? And so nobody knew what happened with babies. So it was kind of revolutionary to look to see what happened to infants. And so Eve did this story, and it was a huge hit for Life magazine. And she did every celebrity and politician, just the Queen of England. I mean, it's a couple times. She just photographed everybody. And here, I didn't know of her, but Joan Crawford. Most of these ended up in my book, these pictures. And here's her picture of Marilyn Monroe that I'd been seeing places, but I didn't realize it was hers. So I found this book. This was out of print at the time. It's recently been reissued. It looks a little different than this, but in those pages, it tells the story of their relationship together. And so I just used the photographs from that to be my framework for my story. And I had to know then, what was going on in Eve's life, because she didn't talk about her life as much. And that I had to know what Marilyn was doing every day. And so all that had to be woven together. But what I found out through this book is, here's some of their pictures together, is that the pictures of Marilyn look so different than anyone else's. I mean, does that even look like her? And Eve marveled that Marilyn in person had a flat face, a small flat face, she said, and her nose was a little long. She called her, she was plump. She just was not anything extraordinary. It's what she gave to the camera, what she exuded to her public. It was a gift that she had. And she gave a different part of herself to Eve. And it's more likely than not because, well, it's just the fact is it's because Eve was a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was no flirting. It was just Eve and her. And so even when, like this is sort of a come on picture, but if you read the book, yes, if you read the book.
When you read the book.
Yes, when you read the book, that you'll see that they were playing around. And if you look carefully, that's one thing I taught myself along the way is to really read photographs, look at faces. And so you could tell she's sort of playing around. There's not really, in her eyes, she's not really connecting with a big flirt. So these photos that I'll be flipping through really fast is just to show over time their shoots and to show how she looks different. She allowed Eve, she knew about this photograph and approved it to be photographed in a bathroom in Chicago, in the Chicago airport. There's Eve in the background there. Marilyn knew about this picture and approved of it. And it just shows that she's just a plain, like Eve said, chubby little legs. She's just not anything different than the rest of us. She made herself different. Mm-hmm. And another thing I noticed in Eve's pictures over and over, how young Marilyn looks. I don't know, I think she let out Norma Jean, to tell you the truth. And, that's Marilyn's real name, the real person behind Marilyn Monroe. But she looks so young. She was, in this picture, she would have been 28. But she will look young and playful. Like, you don't see this playful side of her. Here she is. Look at her poor feet. She had those heels on. Look at the creases in her feet. Yes. And she was called to go to this art. It was supposed to be an art installation in Gwinnett, Illinois. And she was called in the middle of the night to go. And she asked Eve to go, to this art installation because she was really serious about her art. Mm-hmm. And she wanted to show the world that, she was an artist and she could talk. She was going to give a little speech about this opening. She got there and it was a bunch of guys in beards. It was Lincoln days. And there was no art installation. This was the only piece of art. It was this fertility god, and that they put a little bit of a corn stalk there. And I thought, this is so typical of them. Eve would catch her checking out the fertility god's goods, But Marilyn was a great sport, and Eve caught all this, even though she was kind of gotten there under false pretenses. She was a good sport and got along with everybody. She talked with everybody there. Even the little baby in a diaper. I mean, it was just a good sport. And the other thing Eve brought up about this visit is that Marilyn was suffering from endometriosis. And so she was in pain a lot. So she would give to her audiences, like that group, of people in the school or churchyard, there. But she was actually feeling very, very sick. Mm-hmm. And Eve captured her that way. And, there's a lot of stories that I won't go into because we're discussing things. But these are all different photographs in the book. But my point at this point is just to show you how different Marilyn's face looks and everything, mm-hmm. and her body too. And part of it, Eve did insist on using natural light and not working in a studio. She only did studio one time with Marilyn at Marilyn's request for something, but generally they're just very natural, and Marilyn is giving her natural self. Anyhow.
Can I ask you another question?
Yes, do at this point.
I mean, you're kind of touched on how obviously Eve saw her differently or could connect with her and capture her in a different light than any other photographer. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things I loved most about the book is I saw Marilyn differently. I mean, you paint this completely different picture of Marilyn than what I thought that she was, because that's what you saw in your research and through Eve's eyes. Mm-hmm. it's such a daunting task to write any book and create any characters, but you're writing a book of real people and people who are not with us anymore to tell you who they are. How do you start that process of uncovering who they are and figuring out how you're going to portray them?
You know, this book was special for me. I've been doing this since 2007, 2008, as you know, and it's always about real people. And I don't know how I do it, but it is sort of magic. Sometimes I don't know what happened, but I'm very pleased. But this one, it was so easy just to read the photographs. And to tell you the truth, for like other subjects, I really read photographs. I just did some that were more like during the Renaissance, and I had no photographs, but I did have portraits. So actually a visual image of my people is very important.
A picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yes. I don't even need to write for that matter. But yeah, it's the photographs and studying them. And then Eve talked about Marilyn a lot. And then I read other biographers. And the more I knew about Marilyn, the more I realized I didn't agree with the other biographers. I feel like so many of them didn't really put the picture together, like didn't look at her psychologically. And that was my aim for this, is to have a psychological picture of Marilyn. Why did Marilyn do what she did?
Yep.
And good and bad, you know, why?
Yeah.
And so
it really does feel like you're peeling back the curtain of who we all thought Marilyn was. And we do get the why. We get the, you know, where she came from, what her motivations were, why she acted this way on the specific day in the specific photo shoot or whatever she was doing. And that was so it's such I'm a sucker for a behind the scenes, you know, like especially with celebrity stuff. And this was such a total behind the scenes, but also turning kind of your image or what you thought you knew of somebody to who they really were. And really such a sympathetic, I think, gaze for Marilyn, which I think Eve had, right?
Right. Yes, Marilyn was so much more than her image was. And I have found this, if you look at my other books, I do write about famous people, and they're never like what you think. They're never like it. But in her case, she was way stronger. And in fact, a little incident that's in the book, you know, Eve had put aside Marilyn's pictures after Marilyn died. They were good friends for 10 years, and in 62, Marilyn died. And at that time, all those men photographers all had a gold rush with her image. They all publicized her pictures. There were, you know, magazines. Everybody wanted Marilyn pictures. And so they did photos that Marilyn obviously disapproved of. All the ones, and there's been a recent book reissued by Bert Stern, and all those pictures that have holes in them are because she said, I don't want this, and she poked them with a pin.
Wow.
And you'll see those. And so all these people went against her wishes. But what got Eve, that was really making her mad. But somebody photographed, or you printed a photograph of her in the morgue. And she was like, that's it. I don't want a penny from her pictures. This is terrible. And she pulled back, and nobody saw her pictures for almost 25 years. And it's a shame, because this image of Marilyn was being built up, and there was no counterbalance that Eve's pictures would have provided. But what happened was the incident. So Eve was here in America. She had moved to England, and she was here in America taking America's portrait. She was going to do a book on America. And so she was traveling across the country through a cornfield, and Elton John's Candle in the Wind came on. And there's a line in there that says, Hollywood made her and Hollywood broke her. And that was it for Eve, because that's not the truth. Hollywood was never her friend. They were always fighting against her because they couldn't control her. They didn't control the love that people had for her. People just loved her. I think because she was sort of a blank image for a lot of photographers, and people could project what they wanted on her. But you know, she wanted to write that image that she was not made by the studio and she was not broken by them.
Yeah.
Do I sound a little mad?
No, yeah.
I am. Just
Makes
like
me
Eve.
mad too.
Yeah.
But I think Eve is such a strong character in her own right too. I mean, she had a phenomenal life at a time when women, were not living the kind of life that Eve was living. She was on the road. She was taking pictures. She was, making her own choices. And I don't know, you really portray her very interestingly too. And I want you to talk a little bit about, it's her grandson, I think, that you've been in touch with, right? And tell a little bit about that connection and what he thinks of the book.
Oh, that was huge. So Eve had a son, and it was very difficult for her to balance her career and her son. And I was in her work. She's actually written close to 20 books, and some of them are about her experiences. And I could just tell she didn't go on and on, but I could tell it just killed her not to be with her son. And I could tell that it was hard on the son too. And she ended up divorced. In fact, there's a scene in there that's true. The photographers were talking, all the big ones from that era. They're all divorced. It was not a life that you could have a family life. And so this was hard on Eve. So I did not talk to the family. Her son is still alive, and her grandson, who runs her estate. If you go to evearnold.com, it's Michael Arnold behind there. So anyhow, I didn't want to talk to them beforehand because it is fiction, and I wanted to be able to do what I needed to do. But I was so careful the whole time, I was so mindful, so just wanting them to know how much I respected what Eve did and understood what she did. So Michael saw this, and I was on needles and pins. Well, he said, that sounds like my grandmother. He said he wept when he read the book because he kept hearing his grandmother. They were very close. And, she's no longer with us, of course. And it just meant everything. And now we have done some Instagram Live things. We're going to do some events in London for Marilyn Monroe's centennial, because they're doing around the world different exhibits for Marilyn Monroe. There's one in the Academy Award, or I think it's just called the Academy Motion Pictures Museum in LA, at the National Portrait Gallery in London. They're doing something in Paris, because it's a big deal. Marilyn's birthday, she would have been 100 on June 1st this year. So anyhow, yes, Michael and I are a team, and I just so envy that he had a relationship with her.
I just can't imagine how nerve-wracking that had to be, knowing he was reading it. First of all, I mean, it's nerve-wracking enough to just give your book over to anybody, but to him, that had to have been huge. And then to know that you got it, what a huge compliment to know that you got it right, just from the research that you did and what you saw and what she wrote. I mean, I just think that's amazing.
It does get me. And he said, well, you are now the world's leading expert on Eve Arnold. And I'm no, it's you, Michael. It's you and your dad. I'm not me, but that's what
that's really cool.
Yeah, I don't feel like I can step in those shoes, but I did do a lot of research on her.
I wanted to ask you, I went and saw Lynn when she gave her whole slideshow presentation at the Atlanta History Center, I think the night after the book came out, and it's so good. But I just had this question in my mind, because you talked about when you first saw Marilyn in the 7-Year Itch, and you were worried for her, and anxious for her. And I just wondered how you feel about her now after you've done all of this.
Oh, I love her.
Yeah.
I do. And, she told, I'm going to admit something here. She told Eve, just think what I could do for you. Because she approached Eve. Eve did not want to photograph her. She tried to turn her down, and they had a disastrous first sitting. It's amazing that but they found a way, because they are two artists. But where did I start with this?
How you feel about her?
Oh, yes. Okay. But I was wondering, well, how did I
Oh,
get
and
to
what
that
she was
disastrous shoot? But
Is it
anyhow,
something
yes.
she said to Eve?
Yeah. Well, anyhow, yes, that's right. Because she said to Eve, "Think what I could do for you," and Eve ended up. It was that Marilyn did for Eve. She really helped her career, and I feel like if I portrayed Marilyn correctly, I could just hear her saying, "Just think what I could do for you," and in a sweet way. You know, I'm gonna find this thing here. You know, I have felt her presence since early on. During my first draft, I went to New York because most of this book takes place in New York. And so I went there with my daughter, Megan, and we were just going to do a picture of the subway grate, you know, for this picture in the 7-Year Itch. And so it's on Lexington Avenue. And Megan says, "Okay, so Mom, stand over the grate and I'll just take your picture really quickly." Well, it was a summer night. It was hot and the air was really still and heavy. There was not a breeze anywhere. So I took my place on the grate. Megan lifts up her camera and this wind comes out of nowhere and blew my dress like Marilyn Monroe's dress. I mean, this is crazy. And you notice my hair is not blown. It was just the skirt, like a reenactment. And there was nothing underneath. There was no reason for this breeze. And I was kind of cracking up at it, and then it went away. And Megan says, "Oh, Mom, Marilyn was with us," and it really felt like it.
Yeah.
And I've felt her, without like seeing her ghost or anything. I don't mean that, but I've really felt her, and a lot of it's because I can identify with her in some ways. You know, she was a real outsider. I've always been a bit of an outsider. And she really was. You know, she was a foster child. She was in 12 foster homes, in and out of an orphanage. She married at 16, so she wouldn't have to go back into the orphanage. And, you know, she was sexually abused. She had a really, really hard upbringing. She had no upbringing, in fact. In the book, I call her a feral child. I really feel like she was. She brought herself up. So I had this really tender spot for her. But in spite of, you'd think she'd be all, weak and broken. But in spite of this, she became the world's most famous woman. So she just, well, to answer your story, I really do love her.
Yeah.
Or your question, yes, I really do.
Yeah, I think that's what was interesting for me too, is I stopped seeing her as a victim, even though, so many men obviously, used her in so many ways, taking these photographs and, using them for their own gain.
But, she used them.
Right. That's what this book taught me. It taught me that she really had her own power and she knew a lot of what she was doing. And I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. She knew that those pictures would make her famous.
Right.
And they would always, the men were so gross. They'd all say suggestive things to her. And she would know what they wanted by the way they flirted with her. In fact, they would often tell her what to do. And I have a scene in there, and this is true, that Marilyn, she was telling her that the photographers told her what to do. And then Eve said, "Do you do that?" And she said, "No, but it does know how I'm to respond to them." She got their number.
Yeah. So can we move on to the quiz? Do you think they're ready for the quiz?
Oh, okay. Are we? Yes. See, what I like to do, it's time for a quiz, is going back to the photos, how Marilyn looks so different from Eve's camera. And by the way, it's the photographer, not the camera, but she looks so totally different. So what we're going to do here is see if you can tell me which are photographs that look like Eve took them, and which are done by a different photographer. So you have to read the faces.
Gina, are you ready? I know you're not competitive, but
Don't put too much money on it. Okay, this one. What's Eve? Well, Eve did take photographs of her at the actor's studio, but this is not Eve. And if you look, she's not giving the photographer anything. She's just she's not connecting at all. She's just making a face, a beautiful face, but there's no connection there. And that's the key. Look for connection. This one. Or just, what's going on in Marilyn's face. They're good already.
Yeah, you did it.
Yes. How about this one? Yeah.
The other guys.
Yeah, but it's actually a guy. All these, there are scenes in my book about all the Marilyn pictures. And this particular scene, she was giving something a little different to this guy. The guy happened to be Gordon Parks, who is one of my favorites. And I didn't realize he and Eve really walked the same walk, did a lot of same subjects together. And so he's an important character in my book. But anyhow, this was, he understood her in a way, and she gave him a little bit more than she'd give some people. But it's one of my favorite scenes in the book. You'll just have to read it. Okay, this one. Well, yeah, it is, but I could see why you might be fooled a bit. The guy that photographed this is Milton Green, who she ended up going into business with. They had a studio for a time. And so he drew something out that was special, but there was still the male gaze part to it. How about that one? They're not going to have to read my book, are they? Okay, yes, it's Eve. It's Eve. You're right. See, they're good. Mm-hmm. I hope you put a lot of money down, Gina. How about this one?
This feels like a trick one.
It is. It's a trick in a couple ways. Anybody want to guess? Eve or not? No, you're thinking no? Okay. This is by Philippe Halsman, who he loved to trick his subjects into giving their inner self by making them jump. Because he said, you can't put on a fake face when you're jumping.
Control it.
Right.
Yeah.
You are who you are when you're in mid-flight. And so he did it. His photographs are actually famous. If you ever see a famous person jumping from this era, it's his. So the bad thing is Marilyn truly gave her truest self to Eve. And she was very controlling of who she revealed herself to. So when he said to her, you can't help but show yourself when you jump, that freaked Marilyn out. This is Halsman's reporting. That's where I got this for the book. Halsman said, she would not jump. In fact, she would only jump with me. And if you look at her face. Have you ever seen a less natural person? I mean, her teeth.
So controlled.
Oh, yes. Because she didn't feel like she could let herself out to him. So I don't think so.
That is a high jump.
They get some air, though, don't they? They get some air. Yeah. Yeah. Even this, maybe there was. I never read that there was anything, but maybe so, because they get some air. Even this one, when he got her by herself, does that look natural? I mean, her fists are tight and, yeah. She looks like a bomb dropping. Okay, this one.
Yes.
You think that's Eve?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's in the book. How about that one? Yeah, you start to see the male gaze difference. This is a trick question. Who do you think? I know, I know, I know, and that's what's interesting about Marilyn. She said she doesn't even look like her. Marilyn did project these different images of herself. This one is by Eve's mentor, Henri Cartier-Bresson, and he was an empath, and his photographs showed it. And he actually really he understood Marilyn and pulled her out. But he saw her, again, through a male point of view, he saw her as this mythical woman, this not even real woman, just lighter than air, with all these extra feelings, So she's looking very, almost like a little lost girl in a way.
Kind of ethereal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think she looks so beautiful here, but it's not an Eve shot. How about this? This is by Richard Avedon.
She looks miserable.
Yes. And you know what? Eve would never have photographed this, or at least shown it ever, because she looks uncomfortable. It's a gotcha picture. I feel like Avedon was going, see, she's really a broken person. Here you go. And, I know enough about her and Eve. I'm angry when I see this, that he was just trying to, show that, hey, I knew Marilyn, she's broken. And she really wasn't. Oh, this is back to Bresson. I shouldn't have stuck it in there. It's from that set. It's from the Misfits, actually. How about this one? Another trick is Henri Cartier-Bresson. Again, she gives something really light and nice to him, but it's not a confidence. It's like, take care of me sort of look in a way. How about that one? Well, I can hear you're not really sticking your necks out here. And well, you shouldn't. This isn't Eve. That smile, even though it's toothy, and Marilyn didn't do very many toothy smiles except for Eve, it's not really very genuine. Are her eyes smiling? Not really. No smiles, like, what was it?
Tyra Banks.
Tyra Banks, no smizing. Yeah. Now this, what about this? Yeah. And there's teeth, but it's a real smile.
Yeah,
and
it's
she
so
looks
natural.
She looks like a teenager. She was, this is the year before she died. She was 35. She looks so young and so natural and so happy and sweet. Just totally different in Eve's camera. How about that one? Well, it's sort of a trick because it seems like she's coming on, but it is Eve. And the people at her estate call this the kiss. And I ended up, it's important to my book. I don't want to give too much away, but this is there. And the people at the studio and Michael, or at the estate, were just what I did with this picture really blew them away, because that's what they always said. And they're like, how'd you do that? How'd you know that? Well, because I studied the pictures for a couple of years. But yes, that is Eve. And honestly, that she's throwing that kiss to Eve. And here's Eve right there. And that's the end of the quiz. You passed. You passed. Excellent work.
How old did Eve live until?
Just a couple months shy of 100.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh my
and she
God.
was photographing until way into her 80s. She only stopped when she couldn't carry around the equipment anymore, is what she said. And I love her. She gives me hope, because when she was '68, she had her first solo exhibition.
Wow.
She'd photographed all these famous people. She'd done a lot, but as a woman, she could never get her toe hold, as quickly as the men. And so at 68, she had her first solo exhibition in the Brooklyn Museum. And I was there doing research at age 68. And it made me feel empowered, because I knew that Eve waited a long time. And I thought, anybody can do this if you just believe and hang in there.
Yeah, that's incredible, because her work was so prolific. I mean, she shot so many amazing photographs that we all know and would recognize even if we didn't know that it was Eve. And that's crazy to not have her first solo exhibition.
Right. And she got her major awards. She's won every award that photography grants. She got them in her 70s and 80s. She was a OBE, knighted by I guess you'd call her Dame Eve.
Wow.
I don't know.
Eve.
Yeah.
That's my goal in life. Dame Colleen.
Well,
Sounds good, doesn't
I hope you get it before you're 80, like she did.
so I can enjoy it.
Yes. Well, she hung in there years afterwards, so to enjoy it.
Should we open it up to some questions?
Sure.
I'm sure you guys have some. Yeah.
I have a question. You mentioned that their first, Eve and Marilyn's first photo shoot was a little bit catastrophic, if I understood you correctly. What was it that happened that made Marilyn understand I can do this again, or made Eve understand that this needed to keep going? This was a partnership that needed to continue.
That's a really good question, and you'll have to read my book. No, but it is all there, and that was an important chapter in the book and in their lives together. What happened was they had a misunderstanding. Remember, Eve didn't want to photograph her, and I can go back here to it. And Marilyn insisted. Remember, she said, "Think what I could do for you," which made Eve go, "Really? This sex bomb starlet?" She was just starting out. It's like, you're not going to do anything for me. I'm trying to get away from this kind of thing. And anyhow, they agreed to meet at a beach, and Marilyn gave the impression to Eve that it was just going to be Eve's family, her son and her husband, and Eve and Marilyn just getting together for a picnic. Eve didn't even take her camera. Well, Marilyn showed up to this. First of all, there's this crowd there, and then up on the top of over this beach is a beach with cliffs. Here appears Marilyn, looking like a Botticelli Venus, and she wore this. She had on just a little white parachute cloth bikini and army boots, and so I guess she needed those to scale down that cliff. And so she scaled down the cliff and she got on the beach, and everybody surged forward to this huge crowd, supposed to be this picnic. And so Marilyn had to go in the water to escape them, but they kept after her, and the Coast Guard had to pick her up in the water so she wouldn't drown. So, Eve was really miffed. So they were going to do this. Marilyn insisted. She said, "I'm so sorry, we'll do a different shoot." So Eve set up having the shoot that they were both on Long Island, and it was at a playground. And she thought, she didn't put any thought into it. And she said, "Here's this broken equipment. Give me what you want to give me." And they started talking, and Marilyn started giving her something real. And she started thinking, there's more to her than I thought. And then she started feeling bad because the other location for the shoot was in this, it was like the swampy area. She thought Marilyn would just walk through the rushes, and because Marilyn was always, looking so sexy. If you want to look sexy, I'll have you walking through these rushes. Well, they got there and it was really, really muddy. And Eve felt bad, and Marilyn's like, "Nope. And I don't mind at all." And she got down in the mud. This is mud she's calling in, and gave she just started playing with Eve, and just really trying to connect with Eve, and that's what changed Eve. Like there's something.
She saw her humanity.
Yeah.
Like she saw that she was, human too.
She saw she was human and that she really wanted to work with Eve. And, Eve said after she stopped, after Marilyn had died, she said, I've looked my whole life, here she lived to be 100, and she shot everybody, you name it, she photographed them. And she said, I've looked for her the rest of my life, and I never found anybody close to her, as far as our connection. And that's where I got the title. She said, when we were together, I couldn't tell where one of us began and the other ended. We were just together, and together we were brilliant. And so that's where that comes from. Yes.
Hi. First, when did Marilyn first discover Eve? And second, nowadays you can Photoshop to look like her. And what was there any kind of photo manipulation that was used back at that time or anything at all?
Well, they could retouch, and that was a good question, because that was another big thing I didn't mention about Eve. She refused to retouch. And that's why these pictures of Marilyn and all the stars always look so dreamy. First of all, they had studio lighting, which lighting is everything. And then they could retouch, they did have that. And Eve refused to do that. So people do look a little different without that. But what was the first part of the question?
How did Marilyn discover Eve?
Oh, okay. Well, Eve was starting out in the early 50s, and she was with Magnum Photography Agency only because they didn't have a woman. So they just had her there. They just had her shooting, a few women things. She didn't have much to do. She was just kind of like, let's have this woman here in case we need to take pictures of women. And so one day they were going to photograph Marlene Dietrich needed to be photographed. And there were people sick out and whatever. And so Eve got to photograph Marlene Dietrich. Well, she did it in her style with her empathy that she's so famous for. And without any lighting and anything, she caught Marlene at a recording studio, just being Marlene. And that was revolutionary. That's the crazy thing about the book is all these things were revolutionary in the 50s that we take so for granted. Yeah. But to photograph her, in the studio naturally was a big sensation. And so people like Marilyn, who were so interested in photography, she learned of Eve. And Eve was really complimented. Oh, you know me. She sought out Eve at a party for John Huston at the 21 Club. This is all history. And that's where she asked Eve to work with her. And it went from there. Yes.
You wrote this book and Eve had already died, correct?
Yes.
You didn't know her son or grandson until after you wrote the book.
Right.
You said you got your information by looking at the photographs.
Largely. And a lot of reading. And Eve wrote a lot too.
That's what I was going to ask is how did you get your facts about their relationship, their conversations?
That book about the one that I showed, the one that Eve decided that she would photograph them. It's called Marilyn Monroe. It's out in print now, just called Marilyn Monroe by Eve Arnold. That one was called Marilyn Monroe and Appreciation, the first printing of it. But it was from that book. She first she gave a little biography of Marilyn of her own, and then each shoot, they only had, 10 shoots together, but they did spend time as friends. And Marilyn was described by Eve throughout that book. That's what it was about. It was about their relationship. But Eve also said a lot more in her own book called In Retrospect. and she talked about Marilyn there. And there's a number of interviews too, like by the BBC, where she talked about Marilyn. At the end of the book, I have one of those interviews. I took it right from the interview, what happened. And I had Eve imagining, I imagine what Eve was thinking during the interview. So I had a lot to go on because Eve did talk about her a lot.
Yes, not a question, a comment. It's a beautiful book.
Oh, thank you.
And the friendship is beautiful. And not only just the growth of the two women as they become friends, but I think they learn a lot about each other themselves through that friendship. And it's a twofer. We get to see a true Marilyn, and we all get introduced to Eve Arnold. So thank you. It was a beautiful book.
Thank you. You just put it in a nutshell. I need you for that elevator speech.
Were they close in age or was there a big age?
No, I'm so bad with numbers. 14 years difference. Though they were at the same point in their careers in a way when they met in 52. And in that 10 years time, Marilyn really took off. Eve would be slower to do so. It was harder in her field.
I have read the book, and I didn't know very much about Marilyn Monroe, but I was glad that I was able to learn of her through your eyes, because I think it was probably more genuine. And also I'd never really heard of the photographer either, so you introducing us to her and the other photographers in the book.
Oh yeah.
Because you mentioned a lot of them, so yeah, it was a great read.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. More of that?
Yeah.
We did not plant these people.
Thanks.
We will pay you your money after the.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you cover the stories of her Marilyn?
Do I cover the story of her memories?
Of her marriages?
Oh, they're there, and I do talk about it. This is really from Eve's point of view. And so each time she got married, Eve and Marilyn spent less time together. Like when she married DiMaggio, Marilyn dropped off the face of the earth. She said, I'm going to stop acting. I'm going to just be a mother and a wife and cook spaghetti with my husband's mother's recipe. She really tried that. It lasted 7 months, 9 months. It did not last long. It was just not ever going to work for Marilyn because she had this dream and she tried to give it up for DiMaggio. And he was also very possessive. And the rest of his life, he tried to win her back and he knew he'd blown it. There were little notes that he'd written to himself saying, don't possess her. Don't try to tell her what to do. I mean, he really had a little list of things he should not do because he knew that he'd blown those very things.
Didn't he take flowers to her grave?
Yes.
On a regular basis?
And poor Marilyn, at one point, she was convinced by her psychiatrist to go to a mental hospital and into a facility that was a lockdown in isolation. I don't know why in the world they thought that would benefit her. And her mother, her grandmother and grandfather were all schizophrenic. That's why she was abandoned. Her mother was alive. She was not an orphan, but her mother could not care for her from a very young age, like 2 or so. And her first memories of her, this is true, her first memories of her grandmother trying to suffocate her with a pillow. So, she came from this bad place. But where was I going with that?
About Joe.
Oh, Joe.
Yeah.
And, okay.
Oh, the mental institution.
Oh, so
with Joe.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I need you around all the time, in more ways than one.
Oh.
She's the best. But anyhow, so she was in this facility and she had given permission, not knowing what it was, to be locked in here. And they said, well, sorry, you gave us permission. You can't get out. And she was flipping out. Now I know how I got here, because the parent, she was afraid that she was insane too. Put a person in isolation like that? Oh my gosh. So she was just dying. And somehow she got a word out to Joe, and he said, I'll tear this place down. And he got her out, and she had to go to another hospital because she was so messed up from that. And she was in just a regular hospital for, I don't know, a couple months afterward. But he took care of her the rest of their relationship. He was actually quite sweet. She needed him, and they were friends. But the other, with Arthur Miller, I go into that a lot because Eve was there for that, because they were actually friends together for a while, Marilyn Miller and Eve. So you get a picture of that relationship and of it crumbling. And I don't know. I'm so protective of Marilyn, because I feel like I know all that she fought against and how well she did considering everything. But I feel like he did not respect her, Arthur Miller. Very soon in, I think he thought, wow, this is great. I had the most beautiful woman in the world, and then he didn't know what to do with her, and it broke her heart. So, and another thing that played a big part in her that a lot of people say, what's your biggest surprise? Well, I'm gonna tell you the biggest surprise, that she had endometriosis, and it totally shaped her life. She was in major pain. She had several hospitalizations. She had several miscarriages, and that's what messed up her and Arthur Miller. She thought, oh, if we could just have a baby, but she had several miscarriages with him.
Do you cover the Kennedy and that kind of?
A bit, and and it's kind of from what I got from Eve and what she told Marilyn. I think all that conspiracy stuff about the Kennedys is total bunk, and in fact, her thing with Kennedy was a lot like many women's thing with Kennedy. He had this insatiable sexual appetite, and he had the power and influence to have that fed every day by many women. It was really pretty astounding. That's the one thing people don't know. There's no conspiracy with Marilyn, but Marilyn was one of these women, and the problem is he was not a lover. It was just like the old wham bam, thank you ma'am. And so the joke is that, they had this torrid affair, but really it was not a fun thing at all.
Thank you. On that note.
Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am.
I should always end it. Oh, gosh. Thank you. Thanks so much.